All right, so today we're really diving deep into Circe by Madeline Miller,
Oh, excellent.
and specifically into the character of Circe herself.
Okay.
Um, as I mentioned, in the pre-show notes, we only have excerpts from the novel itself.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of piece together the puzzle of her life.
Right.
Just from the excerpts.
From the novel.
From the novel, exactly.
Okay.
So one thing that really struck me right away was the family dynamic.
Uh-huh.
Just to set the stage. She's the daughter of Helios.
Right. The sun god.
The sun god, yeah, and Perse.
A nymph.
A nymph, right?
Yeah.
So already we're starting on some kind of unusual footing.
Yeah, and that right there is kind of the first clue to her relationship with power.
Okay.
You see, even her birth is kind of a power play. It's not a love match.
Yeah.
It's a strategic alliance.
It's almost like a business deal.
It's like a business deal. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perse gets status, Helios gets to continue spreading his influence, let's just say.
So it's not exactly your, warm and fuzzy family portrait
Right.
that you expect from like a god.
No,
right?
It's not.
But what I'm really curious about is how much of that upbringing shapes Circe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does she inherit that ambition?
That's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Because on the surface,
Yeah.
Circe doesn't really seem to fit that mold
Right.
of this like power-hungry family.
Right.
She's drawn to love, she's drawn to beauty.
Right.
Remember how she transforms Glaucus, the fisherman?
Oh, yeah.
It's not about dominance.
Right.
It's about wanting to kind of share something extraordinary.
It's about elevating him.
Yeah, elevating him.
Yeah.
To share something extraordinary with him, exactly.
Yeah, that always kind of struck me.
Yeah.
It's like, up until then,
Mhm.
her power is this potential thing.
Uh-huh.
But this act of transforming Glaucus, it feels like a choice.
It's a conscious choice, yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe also kind of a burden.
Right, because there's consequences.
Absolutely.
I mean, she's stepping outside the boundaries of what's expected of a nymph.
Well, look at the transformation of Scylla,
Right.
who becomes this monstrous sea creature after Circe's spell backfires.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a harsh lesson in the unpredictable nature of magic.
And the consequence.
And the consequences, yeah.
Of her actions.
Of her actions, exactly. And I think it's kind of a turning point for her.
Okay.
It forces her to confront maybe this potential darkness within her own power.
Yeah, and that leads us to her exile on Aya.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
exile, we think punishment.
Right. Yeah, typically.
Yeah.
What?
But on Aya, she's not just physically isolated,
Right.
but she's kind of free from the judgment of the gods,
Mhm.
and she's free to really explore her witchcraft.
Right. And that witchcraft, which was previously a source of conflict,
Right.
becomes her source of strength.
It's like she can finally figure out who she is without
Exactly.
these outside pressures.
And that's a theme that kind of weaves through the whole novel, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
This tension between who other people expect her to be
Right.
and who she's discovering herself to be.
And on Aya, she's building her own world.
She's making her own rules.
Her own rules.
Yeah, it's a sanctuary, but it's also a crucible.
Right.
Where her power
Where she becomes who she is.
and her independence are forged. Exactly.
And then, of course, it's on Aya that she encounters this whole string of characters, both gods and mortals,
Right.
that really kind of test her understanding of power and relationships.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got Hermes,
Oh, yeah, the messenger god.
all charm and wit,
Right.
but also incredibly manipulative.
Yeah, he represents a kind of power that Circe is maybe less familiar with.
Yeah, like a subtle power.
It's not brute force.
Right.
It's more subtle.
It's influence.
Yeah, he comes bearing gifts.
Right.
Gossip.
Right.
But he's also always gathering information, testing her boundaries.
Right.
It's almost a game for him.
Yeah.
But for Circe, it's another lesson
Right.
in how power can be wielded.
Yeah.
Even in seemingly harmless interactions.
Yeah. And then you have Daedalus.
Daedalus, right? The brilliant inventor.
Yeah, who gets roped into creating the Minotaur's labyrinth.
Right.
What I find fascinating there is she seems to genuinely connect with him.
Yeah, there's empathy there,
Yeah.
a shared understanding of what it means to be exiled,
Right.
to be used by the gods,
Yeah.
And with Daedalus, we see a different side of her power emerging.
Right.
It's not just about protecting herself. It's
Okay.
about using her knowledge and her resources to offer sanctuary
Right.
to someone else who's been wronged.
Yeah.
And it's the beginning of her realizing that power can be a force for good.
Right.
For compassion, not just self-preservation.
And of course, we can't talk about Circe without talking about Odysseus.
Odysseus, the master strategist,
Yeah.
the man of twists and turns.
But here's the thing about their encounter.
Yeah.
It kind of challenges the usual narrative.
How so?
This whole, like, turning men into pigs thing.
Right.
It's more than just a cool magic trick. Like, initially, her impulse is to use power defensively.
Right, almost out of fear.
Yeah. But as she gets to know Odysseus, and as their relationship evolves, that changes.
So her connection with him forces her to kind of re-examine her use of power.
Yeah, it's not just reacting.
Right.
It's making more deliberate choices.
Exactly. And it's Odysseus who makes her really confront the complexities of desire, the differences between how mortals and gods experience the world. Their relationship is passionate, but it's also a crucible for her growth.
Right.
It pushes her towards this deeper understanding of herself and her power.
Yeah.
It's almost as if each encounter on Aiaia is another layer being added to who she is.
Like she's really becoming a fully formed person.
Right, pushing her further away from the expectations of her birth and closer to something that she's creating for herself.
Yeah.
It's
really fascinating.
It is.
How her story kind of unfolds in that way.
And it's fascinating how Odysseus, this figure who, seems to embody heroic power, actually kind of reveals its limitations.
You think so?
Yeah, he might be cunning, but he's also impulsive, right? Often leaves, destruction in his wake.
So does Circe see that?
I think she does.
Okay.
And maybe that's part of what makes the relationship so compelling.
Right. She's not blinded by this reputation.
No, she sees his vulnerabilities.
Right.
His capacity for both greatness and, terrible mistakes.
Which brings us to, I think, another turning point for Circe.
Yes.
Motherhood.
Motherhood, even.
With the birth of Telegonus.
Right.
You see this whole other dimension of her emerge. This fierce, protective love.
Yeah.
That almost seems to amplify her powers.
Right. Think about it. Up until this point, her magic has largely been about,
self-preservation.
Self-preservation or transforming others.
Right.
But with Telegonus, it becomes about safeguarding this vulnerable life.
Right. This bridge between the mortal and divine worlds.
Exactly. And she's not just protecting him from monsters or outside threats.
Right. She's willing to defy other gods.
She defies Athena.
Yeah, to keep him safe.
To keep him safe.
She's not the Circe who was once content on the sidelines anymore.
Right.
She's challenging the established order.
Absolutely.
Even if it means putting herself at risk.
What's so fascinating here is how motherhood becomes this catalyst for her understanding of true power.
Okay.
It's not just about strength or control. It's about sacrifice.
It's about putting the needs of another before your own.
Exactly.
But then, of course, there's that prophecy looming over them.
The one where Telegonus is fated to kill Odysseus.
How does that, knowing that this is hanging over them, how did that impact Circe?
It adds this incredible layer of tragedy to their story.
Yeah, you can almost feel that weight on her.
Oh, absolutely. You can feel the weight of that knowledge on her shoulders.
But it also speaks to her maturity.
Right.
That she doesn't try to change fate.
She doesn't try to manipulate events.
She just tries to prepare him.
Yeah, she focuses on preparing Telegonus for the world.
Right.
Equipping him with the strength and the wisdom to face his destiny.
Even though it's heartbreaking.
Even though it's heartbreaking, yeah.
And that's such a contrast to the gods.
Right.
Who are constantly meddling, trying to control fate.
Exactly.
Feels more human.
Yeah.
More accepting.
Absolutely.
Of the complexities of life.
And that's what makes her eventual act of defiance so powerful.
Okay, let's talk about that defiance.
Okay.
It starts with Penelope arriving on Aiaia.
Right.
Penelope, who has always been this symbol of patience, of waiting.
Right. The loyal wife.
Right. But here we see she has her own agenda.
She does.
She's not just passive.
No, she's seeking protection from Athena.
Right. She's making strategic moves.
Exactly.
And that throws a wrench into the whole women are powerless narrative.
It does.
That so often dominates these myths.
Yeah, she may not have Circe's magic, but she has cunning.
Right.
She has resilience.
Yeah. And Circe sees that.
She does.
And she chooses to help her.
She does, even though it means going up against another powerful goddess.
Yeah. Like she's finally done being a pawn
exactly.
in the gods' games.
This is where I think that whole theme of, female empowerment really comes into focus.
Right.
You have these two women,
Yeah.
both in their own way,
Right.
challenging these patriarchal structures
Yeah.
that have defined their lives, and they're forming an alliance,
Yes.
recognizing their shared strength
Yeah.
in a world that often pits women against each other.
It makes you realize that the power dynamics in Circe are so much more complex
They are.
than just gods versus mortals.
Mhm. It's about recognizing those different forms that power can take.
Right.
And how women, even in a patriarchal society,
Yeah.
can find ways to exercise agency to make their own choices.
Okay, so then we get to Circe's final confrontation with Helios.
Right, her father.
It's the culmination of that whole journey.
Yeah.
She's no longer the timid daughter,
Right.
afraid of his wrath.
She stands up to him,
Yeah.
declares her independence, refuses to be used any longer.
It's such a powerful moment.
It is.
This daughter confronting this mighty sun god.
Yeah, and it's not just about anger or rebellion.
It's about choosing her own values.
Right, her own definition of power.
And then that final transformation where she potentially alters her own being.
Right.
That feels like the ultimate act of self-determination.
It's as if she's saying, I will no longer be defined by the expectations of others.
Right.
Not by my birthright.
Not by her gender.
Not by my gender. Not even by my own past.
Yeah.
I choose to create myself anew.
And that's the image we're left with.
Yeah.
Right? Circe sailing away with Telemachus, embracing this uncertain future.
But doing it on her own terms.
But doing it on her own terms.
Yeah.
It's both liberating and a little bit daunting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like stepping off a cliff and trusting that you'll learn to fly on the way down.
Exactly.
Makes you think about the paths we choose, right? And those moments that kind of define who we are.
It really does.
Her journey is epic.
Oh, yeah.
Filled with gods and monsters, but at its heart, it's a story a lot of us can relate to.
Oh, absolutely.
That struggle to break free from expectations.
Yeah, to figure out who you are when the world keeps trying to put you in a box.
Exactly.
And it's not just about breaking free. It's about what you build in that newfound space.
Yeah.
You know, Circe doesn't just reject her divine family.
Right.
She creates a life on Aya
Yeah.
that reflects her values, sanctuary knowledge connection.
It's like her witchcraft becomes a metaphor for all the ways we transform ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually.
Exactly. She takes this thing,
This
power that everyone else saw as dangerous,
and turns it into something life-giving.
yeah, something that nourishes her and the people she lets into her world.
And what's so striking is how she learns to wield that power.
Right.
With increasing compassion.
Yeah.
Remember those early transformations?
Yeah.
Fueled by jealousy or a need to protect herself?
Right.
By the end, her magic is about empowerment.
Yeah.
About helping Penelope and Telemachus escape Athena's control.
It's not just reacting.
It's acting with purpose.
Yeah.
Aligning her power with her, evolving sense of right and wrong.
It's interesting because when we think of powerful figures, especially in these ancient myths,
Yeah.
it's so often about dominance.
Right. About imposing your will.
Yeah.
On others.
But with Circe, it's almost the opposite.
Right. Her strength comes from her willingness to let go.
Yeah.
To accept things she can't control.
Like the prophecy with Telegonus?
Exactly. That's such a key insight.
Yeah.
Her acceptance of fate, her love for Telegonus.
Even knowing
his destiny.
Right.
That's where her true power lies.
Yeah, it's not about bending the world to her will.
It's about navigating it.
Yeah.
With wisdom and compassion, even when it breaks her heart.
And it's like she embraces the full spectrum of human experience.
Right. The joy and the grief, the love and the loss.
Yeah, she doesn't shy away from the darkness.
But she also never loses sight of the light.
Right.
The beauty she feels in the natural world and her connections with others.
And those connections are ultimately her greatest source of strength.
I think so. She could have remained isolated on Aya.
Right.
Bitter and resentful.
Totally.
But she chooses to open herself up.
Yeah.
To others, to forge those bonds with Hermes, with Daedalus, with Odysseus.
Even knowing it might bring heartbreak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes her final choice so powerful.
Right.
To sail away with Telemachus.
Yeah, it's not just about escape.
It's about connection over isolation.
Yeah.
About embracing the unknown with someone she cares for.
It's like she's saying, yes, the world is full of danger.
But it's also full of beauty.
Yeah, and I'm going to face it head on with my heart open.
It's a powerful image to leave us with, isn't it?
Yeah.
Circe, the once exiled sorceress, transformed by love, by loss, by her own choices.
Right.
Sailing into a future that she's creating for herself.
Makes you wonder what possibilities we can unlock when we embrace our own power.
It really does.
Not to dominate, but to connect, to create, to heal.
Right. What stories might we write with our lives?
Yeah.
When we dare to step outside the boundaries of what's expected of us.
Right.
And chart our own course.
So as we emerge from this deep dive into Circe, what stays with you?
Yeah, what resonates?
Is it that journey from exile to empowerment?
Is it her unconventional use of power?
Or is it just a reminder that even in a world ruled by gods, even faced with unchangeable fate, we still have the power to choose to change, to become? We hope you'll keep exploring these questions.
Keep questioning those narratives you've been told.
And keep seeking out those stories that spark your imagination and challenge you.
To see the world.
To see the world and yourself in a new light.
And remember that journey of self-discovery is never truly over.
Right.
There's always more to learn, more to uncover, more ways to transform.
So keep reading, keep questioning.
And keep embracing those messy, magical, utterly human parts of yourselves.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.
Keep seeking those stories that make you think, make you feel.
And make you want to dive deeper.
And make you want to dive deeper into the mysteries of the world around us.